Hi, happy Friday. I always like to say I didn't actually win a Juno Award. I was nominated for a Juno Award in a category called Rock Album, where I was the only female. And for me, especially at that time, it was the better than anything that winning, losing, didn't matter. The fact that I was the only woman, girl, chick, was more important to me. And it was something that I was more proud of than anything, and I still am. And I'm proud to be here today as a woman and as a Canadian woman. Thank you, Shane, for allowing me the privilege of standing with you this morning as we all were welcomed here. It's a great honor for me to be here and included in this variety of speakers talking about Canada specifically. 150 years is a pretty big deal. And it seems like we've already been 150. It's like, what? It's not even here yet. It's 2017, it's not even here. But, you know, I was born in India, a Canadian birth abroad. And I have to thank my birth mother, only 16 years my elder. Because of her, I was Canadian and the only Canadian in my family. And this, for me, as a little kid, was so important and so empowering. My parents were American. More importantly, they were missionaries. You can imagine quite a time I gave them. But they were good American kids, very active in the civil rights movement in the United States and very active in their church. And they adopted my older sister, Shireen, a year before me. And then they adopted me, their Canadian kid. And then they moved back to the United States and had their own baby, my little sister, who's an American. But as the only Canadian in my family, it was part of how I self-identified, but part of how my family was able to self-identify and ride on that Canada coattail and introduce me. This is Beth, our Canadian kid. Come on, Beth, do your Canadian song or do your Canadian jig or whatever it was. And I took a great sense of responsibility to that. You know, my parents were academics, and they were very diplomatic, polite people, kind people. And the responsibility that I had as a Canadian was to up that, because Canadians were even more polite. It was like South Dakota and Minnesota polite on 100, or 150, if you will. And you know, throughout my life, as someone who is lucky enough to be able to carve out a career in the performing arts, I don't know that it would have been possible in any other country, to be honest with you. Obviously, having lived here my entire adult life, I have no basis of comparison. But the ability for me as a Canadian artist to thrive and create and function and eat and survive for a couple decades, being nominated for Junos and being on the CBC, I just feel like the luckiest girl in the world. And I think that as Canadians, we're all very lucky, even though it is quite sobering to discuss some of our challenges and our issues. I think the thing that remains true for me, kind of as I move forward through life, really trying to honor my parents and honor my country and live this life that I had, this life of creativity and happiness and just a life of gratitude. Part of my thankfulness and positivity and optimism as I go through this world with my little happy hat on is a big part of being Canadian for me. And a big sense of confidence that I have and a sense of self really has a lot to do with my birthright, where I come from, where I live, and where I'm going, and where Canada's going. So part of my responsibility for being the happy Canadian kid in my family is also for being the grateful Canadian kid in this country, as a woman, as an adult, and being proud and having a real sense of thoughtfulness, responsibility, gratitude when I think about where I came from, my roots, and I don't know, my countrymen or women. I mean, we're all together in it. I'm on Twitter. I don't really know how to do all that much else with computers. Don't kid yourself. I know how to tweet and hit reply on an email. I don't have slides or PowerPoint because I didn't actually know what that was. But I like doing these little things called Word of the Day. I don't know how I started doing it. It was just a habit, and I think probably a lot of people do it. And it's basically, I don't know, an intention, like a word that you can carry with you and go back to, and it helps set your focus for the day. And I like kind of participating in that type of thing. And today it was unity. And I just really feel like how I self-identify as a Canadian and as a woman, I feel unified with the rest of the country, in even that small way, even by the default of simply being Canadian. Listening to a lot of the other speakers and how people travel around the world and get a reaction from other people about being Canadian and our Canadianness. And in the circles that I travel in, a lot of Ren and Stimpy references are made to the Royal Canadian Yaksman, if anyone's familiar with that song. And there's obviously there's a lot of tomfoolery and teasing that goes along with some of the things that get identified as Canadian. I don't believe that hockey is the only thing that is important about us, although it's very close to the top. When I was a little kid, we really romanticized Pierre Trudeau a great deal. And I think that remains true, and I think that we do have those icons that we can hold dear and be able to pin our Canadiana on. And some of those things make us feel really good and unified and really happy, like the Via Rail and all our stories as little kids about taking train rides. And I loved Rob's idea of the white train and writing words on the train as it passes through every town. As a lyricist and as someone who loves language and the power of words and hopes to always impact with words in my art, I thought that writing love letters to Canada, obviously, is a no-brainer for me. Anything, write a song for the country. Write love letters or letters of gratitude or have a personal moment on Canada's birthday of really verbalizing how grateful we really are, despite all the shortcomings that this country has and faces. I just think that being able to verbalize our real love and our deep affection for Canada as a concept, as a nation, as a bunch of people in a bunch of communities with a bunch of good Canadian kids that all want to do well and see each other do well. We are an encouraging bunch. We are a polite bunch, but we also can be very supportive to each other and are on a daily basis. It's part of how I self-identify, and I know that it's part of how many other people self-identify. I think it's important, and I think that's part of the, the loveliness about Canadians. And yes, it is how we're perceived, and yes, it is how I perceive us in my little happy, go on, Beth, show me your Canadian jig type of way. As we move toward 2017, I just think that an event like this is important and empowering because it does encourage us and it does create dialogue. And I think that once we start talking and sharing and experiencing and realizing all the mutuality that there is, that exists about how happy we are, really, really, deep down, to live here in this country and to be Canadian and to hopefully have a better society than when we were younger, creating something more important and special for the future generations, for our kids. And to have those moments of gratitude, like I'm having right now, for just being here in the room with everybody and talking about this great nation and basically sharing how much we love it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.